Okay, hello everybody and welcome to our faculty advice panel. Let me be the first, probably the second, third, fourth, depending on how many events you've attended before, to welcome you to Teachers College broadly. My name is Cameron Arnzen. I am a PhD student in the Politics and Education program here. I'm going into my third year, and I'm happy to be able to host this panel. In the past, this has been such a wonderful panel because one of the biggest hurdles for me personally was understanding, oh my gosh, faculty are people too. And then the second hurdle was, oh, faculty are people that have very similar experiences to the things that I'm facing right now, and they know and have advice and helpful advice to how to get past these hurdles and get past these barriers and really be a successful student no matter what it is that you want to do. So I would like to welcome everyone here in person and those who are watching online, and really just wish you all the best orientation that you can have here at Teachers College. And that being said, the next thing that I'd like to do is give both of our faculty panelists some time to introduce themselves. To each of you, just how did you get here, what did you do to get here, and what are your affiliations at Teachers College and broadly?
Thanks, Cam. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you here. My name is Ansley Erickson. I'm an associate professor of history and education policy in the departments of arts and humanities and education policy and social analysis. What do I do here? I teach courses in the history and politics of education, predominantly in the United States. I came here after a career as a classroom teacher and then graduate work, which I'll say more about later, in US history. And here, in addition to my core faculty role, I'm also the co-director of the Center on History and Education, which works on partnerships between local schools, teachers, and others around the history of education, especially in New York. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, good afternoon. First off, I want to extend a welcome to you all as well. I could feel the excitement, the anticipation, and perhaps some anxiety about embarking on this journey for those who are here in present. I can't tell what's going on virtually, but I suspect that the feelings are similar there. And it's just nice to see folks here in person again. I think that's a welcome departure from these last couple of years. I'd also like to thank the folks who organized this panel for inviting me to participate here. My name is Leslie Williams, and I'm a lecturer in the higher and post-secondary education program, and that's in the Department of Organization and Leadership. I teach classes on college student development theory, higher education policymaking, theories of diversity in higher education, and affirmative action in higher education admissions. In addition to my role as an instructor, I'll also be taking on some responsibilities for organizing a lecture series on current events, current issues in higher education. So that's it for me.
We are so benefited for having you both here to talk with us about these important topics. The first of which is another realization that I personally had, and I think many of you will also have, and that is you are faculty now, you're teaching courses, you're doing impressive scholarship, but you were graduate students at one point. You were also in the same positions that we were. So one thing that I think would be really helpful is, can you tell us a little bit about your own experiences as a graduate student, be it in your master's, your doctoral program, and what was surprising to you? You know, what did you find helpful to know? What were some revelations that you had that you think would be really beneficial for students listening and watching now? Who wants to go first?
I'll defer to you.
Next time I will defer to you. Okay. So my own trajectory into graduate school, I finished undergrad and worked in a research job for a few years and then decided to come back into a master's program. I was coming to Columbia, actually, not TC, but Columbia across the street. And I remember very clearly my first day, like going to an orientation event. And walking across campus, and many of you may have taken this walk. I came from 116th Street and Broadway across and up the low library steps. And first I thought, why do I feel this way? Like, why do I feel like everything is so huge? And I was noticing the face of Butler Library and the names that are carved in stone across the top of it, and this very sort of grand architecture of the McKim Mead and White campus. And I felt lucky because I thought, you know, this is on purpose. And I was able to notice that feeling of sort of overwhelmedness was in part built into the design of the place. And remembering that and being able to name it as something that then I would have to choose to work against and to say to myself, no, hold on, okay, it's trying to make me feel this way, but I deserve to be here. It's right for me to be here. Lots of other people deserve to be here too, was really crucial. And so I hope that you make that move also, right? Like in the moments when graduate school feels too big, intentionally makes you feel small, remind yourself that you deserve to be here. And remind yourself that everybody, including the people at the front of the classroom, have had their own struggles in the process of finding their way in graduate school. I'm happy to say more in that vein, but I think that's a sort of general, like, I hope you feel like you deserve to be here. And at the places where you feel the institution suggesting to you otherwise, try to step back and say, hold on, that's the institution telling me otherwise, but I know that I deserve to be here, and that other people have struggled on this path, and you will find your way.
So I first came to Teachers College, I describe it, I think I picked up this term here as a mid-career professional. So I was already, I think, in my probably late 20s or early 30s. I had worked for a number of years. But I had worked as a middle and high school social studies and history teacher at independent schools here in New York. And I later on became a multicultural affairs administrator at a small liberal arts college in Connecticut, which also happened to be where I had attended as an undergraduate. Both of those settings, the middle and high school teaching and the liberal arts college, were, you know, predominantly white, fairly elite type institutions, and my work had always been about access and success of marginalized students, whether that was trying to reflect their experiences in the curriculum in middle and high school, or doing actually frontline service, student services, advocacy, support work in the college. But what I learned from that experience is that work is challenging, and it's quite political, but it was made so even more because I didn't have a graduate degree. So I had a bachelor's degree, and I thought I was fairly knowledgeable from my own personal experiences and from attending conferences, but it became clear that a graduate degree was necessary to sort of legitimize my positions on a variety of issues. So I decided that it was time for me to come back to graduate school. I grew up here in New York. I'd had a number of friends who had come to Teachers College. I'd actually come to events here in Milbank Hall as a New Yorker, not as a TC student. And so it made sense for me to choose to come here. I had desperately wanted to come back to New York anyway. So I chose to apply and then enroll here. And perhaps in similar ways that Professor Erickson described, definitely felt some anxiety and unease about being here when I first arrived. And you know, that's tied into a variety of identities. Some of it was that I was an older student, I think, and trying to, you know, get accustomed to being on the other side of a classroom, as opposed to being sort of a presenter or a teacher, instructor, to actually being the student inside of the classroom. One of the things that I learned early on was that I needed to put in more time and effort into my work here. So there's one professor, I think in one of my first classes, and Cam, you probably know Professor Doherty. it was a higher ed program, and he had a particular approach to teaching that required students to do this really detailed response to the readings, detailed but also concise, one page, single space, 1-inch margins every 2 weeks. And my first time doing that, I read pretty closely, and so I had done that, but I assumed that it would take me about, an hour, hour and a half to, answer all of the questions. It was much more demanding than that. I should have sort of, reserved more time for that, and but I turned it in because it was due, and when I got the feedback back about a week ago, what I remember from the feedback was that the sentence is, "This seems rushed." And so I learned from that experience that I needed to dedicate more time to anything that I would do as a graduate student. I would always read closely, but in terms of developing the kinds of thoughtful, insightful responses, critical responses, I needed to put more time into that.
That is great, and both of you gave such great answers that I think really answer the question of what did you learn as a graduate student? What did you reflect on that helped you and helped you succeed as a graduate student? Which you did, because here you are as faculty at Teachers College. And so my next question is segueing from that. What's your favorite part of being a faculty here at TC?
So I had to make sure I wrote down notes, because otherwise, I might ramble a little bit. So that keep me within the rails here. And one of the things about speaking in front of panels like this and in front of students, there can be a way in which responses can seem kind of designed to satisfy the interests of that audience, right? And I really, in thinking about this, I really do realize and honestly feel that part of what I really appreciated most has been my interactions with students. Students come from a variety of backgrounds and experiences. When students bring their whole selves into a classroom, their thoughts, they read closely, they have critiques, they see affirmations in what's being shared, they engage with each other, they engage with me. I really feel like those are ways in which I learn, other students learn, and the entire environment around the classroom is enriched. So I've really valued that.
Yeah, I think building on that, I very much appreciate the chance to work with students as their ideas and agendas change over time. So, noticing the ways that people describe what they're interested in at the beginning of a class or at the beginning of a program, and seeing what the opportunities they have from classes, the other opportunities that they make for themselves do to change those ideas and change those agendas. And sometimes what they're doing is setting out a set of ideas that they actually would like to collaborate with a colleague or a professor on, and those are really wonderful opportunities, and I'm really pleased to be able to work with students in those ways. And so I think one way to turn that into a piece of advice is to make sure that you use the opportunities that you have to connect with faculty members as places not only to get information from them, but to let them know a little bit about what it is that's driving your work here, because that might then produce invitations to participate on projects or research teams that might not otherwise be open to you just because people don't know enough, right, about what your prior work is, about what your interests are. So, implied in this is like, find times to talk to people, right? Use office hours, use those spaces, but don't feel like it's only about, it can be crucially about learning to navigate this place, but don't feel like it's only that, because it's also about letting people know about what you're bringing, and opportunities can come from that. Yeah, so that was a little bit of a meander around the question, but.
It was helpful and it was accurate. I mean, having been in one of your classes, I can attest to the fact that sometimes you would ask a question that would push me to think about something in a way that I had not previously, adding color to the way that I was thinking about it, and adding depth and richness to it. And those conversations with faculty in all aspects, whether it's in a classroom dynamic, whether it's in office hours, are so valuable, so important, and something that students should really not feel a barrier to taking advantage of. Faculty are here for you, right? Like that is why they are here, is because of you, and because of your interests, and because of what you're wanting to do with your education here.
Can I add something real quick there?
Yeah.
So I'd like to say I absolutely think the same way. I would add that, don't be shy, but also engage with your faculty and your peers as authentically and as organically as possible. There are ways in which there's some ways in which students can come across, or not students, those kinds of interactions can come across as more instrumental, as in trying to sort of gain something as opposed to being normal, organic, natural. To the best that you can, I think it's important to convey the sense of yourself as someone who's genuinely interested, not just someone who's interested in sort of like, adding a line to their CV or trying to, get in on a research team or a publication just for the instrumental purpose. So, yeah.
I want to add one more thing to that. So one of the things that's different about being in, you might be here coming straight out of undergrad, and that's great, but you also might be here in some ways in a very different moment in your life. And I think, Leslie, you were referencing this, right? The having done some work, having worked possibly for a very long time and developed a strong sense of yourself as a professional, you get to bring that into the class, right? That is not, you're not supposed to revert to your undergrad self, right? You have the opportunity to integrate yourself as a student and yourself as a previous professional in the work you're doing. And if you feel yourself saying, well, now I have to be back in school mode, and all that stuff I know from other parts of my life no longer applies, try to stop yourself, right? Because part of what you're trying to do here is build on what you know from different parts of your life, right? The different kinds of knowledge you got in undergrad, the different kinds of knowledge you got in your life as a professional in various spaces. And ideally, you're gonna have a more meaningful experience here if you're seeing them as connected. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about being in a professional school, is that relationship between your work and your scholarly interests and potentially your teaching interests can be all mixed up together, and that we're better off when we think and learn in those ways.
Amen.
And I think it's so much of the start of graduate school is an exercise in understanding the imposter syndrome that we all have, that we all face, and it manifests in different ways for everyone, whether it is, am I checking back into a student identity? Am I trying to reconcile it with my own identity, my professional identity, my familial identity? It can be hard to juggle all of these things together. So it's really helpful to be honest with it and to be, aware of the fact that you are, here as a student because of all of these identities, not in spite of. And so we know a little bit about both of your paths to Teachers College, to being a faculty at Teachers College. If you, looking out at the audience and thinking about all the people online that are just starting their graduate school experiences, some of them returning, some of them, continuing on from undergrad, what is one aspect of graduate school that you think would be so valuable for them to know at this point? Something that is going to be beneficial for everyone.
I'll start. I can start. Okay. So, I think the body of knowledge on any particular subject or course is so broad and so deep that it's never possible to cover everything in one course. And so I think of my courses and syllabi as sort of like introductions and a resource. So we'll get through, hopefully, the majority of what's on the syllabus, depending on how engaged students might be or how, other issues that are related pop up. But we might not get to everything. but they might still be really valuable things for you to engage with and know a little bit about. So, you know, read closely. If there are things that, you know, don't get engaged with in class, try to engage your peers. You know, you could do reading groups, discussion groups that extend the opportunity for you to learn. Attend, you know, lectures, or workshops, presentations, conferences that might be related. Professor Erickson, over the course of the time that I've been here at TC, I was here at TC as a student, and also now, you know, has organized with her colleagues multiple, you know, really interesting talks, workshops, lectures, and I kind of know you because of those, because I was probably a fairly frequent face at those, but just a really rich, you know, learning opportunities that it can extend what you're getting in the classroom. So that's one bit of advice that I would offer.
Yes, absolutely. Follow Professor Williams's advice. From a slightly different perspective, right? You know, there is an immense amount of things on offer, and there's always a lot of work to be done beyond the syllabus. And that could suggest that what you need to do is just do only Teachers College, right? All you're doing is your graduate program. That's it. And I would suggest that you can't actually do that. You can't be a happy and successful student if that's your strategy, right? There has to be something else. And that something else is gonna depend on who you are, right? And your family configuration and your life in New York and a whole bunch of things. But especially, I think even more so for doctoral students who are looking at a very long trajectory, you need to have something that is outside of this place. And having something that is outside of this place is not going to make you less of a student. It actually might be the thing that keeps you alive and happy and sustained while you're being the best student you can be. In my case, that counterweight was that I started a doctoral program with a 10-month-old. So there were limits. They were externally imposed and very loud. But for me, I think I was a much happier student with something in my life outside of just the books that I was supposed to be reading. So think about what that other thing might be for you, and give yourself permission to have it. Because probably most parts of the institution are not designed to encourage that, right? But it might be the thing that really is what makes it possible for you to sustain yourself. So in that way, it's crucial.
I always love hosting this panel because it makes me have this deep-seated feeling of, I wish I'd listened to this and heard this when I started, because it's really helpful now, but you know, I'm almost on my way out now.
You have time.
I got time to find that counterweight. There have been a lot of pieces of advice and a lot of really great guidance that you both have offered through your conversation today. But we have about 5 minutes left, so I wanted to just kind of open it up for us to riff on what other pieces of advice do you have? You know, like starting these programs, starting these endeavors, and in many ways starting the careers and futures that you're wanting to have. What kinds of advice do you think that you would give that you haven't already?
I'll connect to Professor Erickson's sense of, you know, the things that extend beyond, you know, this campus and your classrooms, but actually also incorporates this campus and the classrooms. This is such a rich academic, intellectual, cultural, social setting, Teachers College, Columbia, and the greater New York City area. So, you know, to the extent that you can, take advantage of as much as you can. You know, I think whether it is the services, you know, that come out of your program or your department, the library does excellent stuff around research. The Graduate Student Life and Development Office does stuff around leadership development. They offer, hopefully they still do now that we're moving through the pandemic, but discounts to Broadway plays and sometimes to see my beloved Knicks. Miller Theater at Columbia has discount tickets for amazing music concerts or theater productions. Museums are discounted. So there's so much stuff that's here in the city that can extend your knowledge of what you're exploring in your program, but also provide some of that, much needed social, cultural, spiritual nourishment that you need to survive a program, to thrive through a program. So, that would be a set of advice that I would offer.
I think in some ways coming back to that notion of how you feel you are, who you are in relationship to this institution, remember that you can ask people how things work, right? Those of you who study ideas about social and cultural capital will recognize this line of thinking, right? There are tons of systems that are really crucial for what opportunities you do or don't have that are sometimes assumed to be familiar. And I think a lot of people are aware of that and trying to push against that and say, let's be as explicit as we can, right? We were just talking about this, like what are the explicit ways that we can help people get ready for the job market, right? That's a world full of codes and systems that are intentionally difficult to figure out. But there are tons of others, right? Like even something like office hours. Like, well, they say I should go to office hours, but what do you do there, right? How do you, even literally, like, I just show up? Am I supposed to make an appointment? Like, what do I talk about? So it's fine to ask people how things work, because somebody knows. Somebody's benefiting from knowing, right? And it's not fair for only some people to know and others to have to figure it out or risk not participating because they don't know how it works. So if it's a student who's been in your program longer than you, if it's a faculty member you feel comfortable saying, talk me through this. Like, what do you mean a lit review? I've heard that phrase, but I actually don't know what the pieces are. Like, in places that you feel safe, ask for the rules and the norms to be broken down for you, and understand that everybody, like the process of becoming, especially in doctoral training, the process of becoming a scholar in the field is full of people trying to do something they've never done before for the first time, and it's incredible that we ask people to do that all by themselves. So see what you can do to find people with whom you can share experience and knowledge about how those things work, right? So for me, as a graduate student and then a young faculty member, finding sort of writing groups of people at similar professional stages was really important, right? People with whom I could say, well, I'm supposed to write a book proposal. I don't know what a book proposal looks like. Has anybody seen a book proposal? Like, or what is a conference presentation, right? What do you do there? So again, there are tons of these. I'm probably not naming all of them, but ask people, because there's no shame in asking. All of it is too coded and too inequitable because of the ways it's coded and shrouded. And just, hopefully where you feel like you can, ask, because I think people will be willing to answer that question to the greatest extent of their ability.
That was helpful, and I think too the students that you will take classes with and interact with and learn from in all of these opportunities, support them too, right? Like if you learn something, that is information that is beneficial to so many people, and there's very much a culture of that at Teachers College within the students. So continue to also pay it forward in that way too. Supporting students in overcoming those barriers and thinking about how sometimes the system is designed this way intentionally, and so how do we combat that? Well, we combat that together. That's how we do that. So we have just actually no minutes left, so now it is time for them to take over and ask us questions. So at this time, we'll open it up, and feel free to ask. You have two wonderful faculty experts here with their own experiences, willing to give you wonderful advice. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask at this time, now would be a great time. Yeah.
are there any pro tips to offer about this dissertation stuff? I'm just starting this fall, so I don't think I'm at the dissertation phase yet, but I don't know if I should be thinking about it yet. So yeah.
I'll repeat the question for everyone who, because the mic came late, I'll repeat the question, and it's also a question I have starting my dissertation. So, what is a dissertation? Why does it scare me? And do you have any tips for how to think about it, starting your doctoral program or approaching it as it is, impending for me, exactly? How do you tackle that?
So you stopped by saying I'm at the beginning and I think I'm not there yet, and that's the place to be right now, right? Like, it is okay to say I am scared of this idea of a dissertation and I'm not gonna focus on it right now to the extent you can, because it is intentionally something that you need to shape after some number of years of work in classes. And one way to think about that is that you need to get a sense of what other scholars in the field you care about have done before you can figure out what your original contribution is going to be. And probably the easiest way to understand what a dissertation is as that original contribution that you're going to make, right? And so you're not quite ready to figure that out until you've figured out what the conversation amongst other scholars is. So maybe that's a little bit of a it's gonna be okay, because you're gonna you're gonna read something at some point and be like, this is a great question, but they're answering it the wrong way, right? Maybe that's a project, right? Or, they asked this question in this place, but if I think about it, if I move it someplace else, it might look totally different, right? So I think that the process of engaging with other scholarship will open doors that you can then pursue in dissertations. And hopefully your program, and if not your program, then other networks of graduate students and possibly even other networks of people in the field will let you get connected to people who are at more advanced stages of working on this thing called the dissertation, so that you can see images of what it looks like before you have to take your own first steps. So, sure.
I'll add that, obviously their coursework helps in, you getting a sense of what the conversation is in the field. I always tell students who I think have interest in, pursuing a doctorate, whether it is they're starting a program now or in the future they will, use any opportunities you have to write a paper in a class where you get to choose the topic. Use that opportunity to develop a more in-depth knowledge of something that you might want to pursue. And so you can build on that knowledge, class by class, and it can later help to inform the questions that you might ask, the lit review that you might need to engage with for your dissertation. So that's another way I think about it. So, you can kind of start doing that, almost off the bat as you begin to clarify what it is that you might want to explore.
Welcome.
All right. Any other great questions we have a couple right here in the middle, so if the mic could migrate that way.
They're
It's
recorded.
for Zoom,
It's being
good.
recorded too, so
Yeah.
yes, it's best for you to have a microphone.
It's on its way.
Here's the mic.
So thank you for sharing all the experience and advice for us to enjoy our graduate life. And I'm an international student from China. So as every international student, I'm afraid of we have this language barrier and cultural differences. So I would like to know, in your experience, what difference is there between international students and students that have, say, English as their mother tongue? And what advice do you have for students like me? Thank you.
You want to start?
Go for it.
Okay. So, I think building on something that Professor Erickson shared earlier about students bringing their, variety of experiences, personal, professional, academic, into the classroom and using that to enrich the learning in the classroom. What I have seen is the perspectives that international students bring to issues around higher education, because that's my field, right? So you've all already gone to undergrad, and that's why you're here. And so thinking about things like when I teach a college student development course, you know, what is it like as a international student who's done their undergraduate in their home country, and how does that compare to the things that you're reading? So the insights that international students bring to issues of whether it's college student development, policy making in higher ed, diversity in higher ed, are really, I think, valuable insights that help us to get beyond sort of our, you know, US, North American kind of bubble about thinking about education and educational processes in higher ed. So that, I think, is really valuable. I think also that, you know, finding reassurance in your ability to communicate, you know, in a second language. First off, you know, I would not be able to function in another country, in another language. So there's a real asset that you have there. And so, you know, I think be confident in that, but also then if you feel that there are additional supports that you need, ask about what those might be. Maybe it's the Writing Center. You know, maybe there's some other services that are available from the International Student Office, et cetera. But don't be afraid to ask about additional support that you might need to make you feel that as successful as possible. So I would offer those.
Yeah, I think those are great pieces of advice. It seems to me also like you can choose to be intentional about connecting with people in your own program, just to make sure to build connections with folks there who might be domestic students as well as international students, but also to think about the ways that you can, you know, build relationships, as I'm sure you're already doing, with other international students who are here, because international students come to TC to a wide range of different programs, right? And build communities with each other that are probably very sustaining, right? In addition to what the relationships they have in their own program.
Great, thank you for that question. That was a great question. I know there were a couple others in this area too. If you wanna, oh, perfect.
Hi, thank you again for being here today and sharing this wonderful advice with us. I was just wondering if you could talk about some common traits of students who really thrive here at TC.
That's a good question. Who's going to go
Yeah.
first?
I have a colleague who used to say this is a really good place for grown-ups. And I think what she meant was that in ways that are very different than undergraduate places, and also in ways that are probably very different than some other kinds of graduate training, which are very cohort-based and very sort of group experienced focused. A lot of people's experiences at TC are going to look exactly like what they make them look. And you're going to have ways in which your experience overlaps with other people, but they're going to be very distinct. And so recognizing that you're in charge in a lot of ways, I think that's what she's getting at when she says it's a good place for grown-ups. And recognizing that a lot of the initiative and the sort of initial action is going to have to be yours. I think that's a really good disposition. That doesn't mean people don't build tremendous community here, but often they have to do the building, right? So thinking of that as part of what you're creating for yourself is important. Shifting to the classroom, I think it matters that Professor Williams gave you a story about feedback, right? I think people who are able to hear feedback from their classmates, from their friends, as well as from their professors, are able to make good use of this place. And that's not easy, right? I mean, academics complain about peer review forever. So we also struggle with feedback. I don't mean to minimize it, but if you just sort of say, this is part of being able to learn here is being able to take feedback, that some of it I might recognize and welcome, and some of it I might bristle at and have to live with, and some of it you might ultimately reject. But that is part of the learning experience, and sort of, you know, paying attention to how you're doing with that, I think is a really valuable thing. And I feel like the students who I think have had the richest richest experience, and I have seen grow the most, have been those who have been open to that kind of feedback.
I totally support those that advice. I feel like from my own experience, I remember one of my early courses here was a really dense and challenging course in political anthropology. It was outside of my area of focus, but my advisor thought it would really help my growth and development. But we were basically reading like 2 books per class, and there was no way for us to get through all of that. But I found a couple other students in the class who were interested in sort of engaging with the work in ways outside of the classroom, because we just couldn't cover it all. So we would read, and then we would meet like a day before class and have sort of share with each other our perspectives, help each other wrestle with questions, or identify issues that we would want to raise in class the next day. So again, that relates to Professor Erickson's advice about sort of taking the initiative for the experience that you want to have. I'll leave it at that, because I think there's more that I can go into, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Great answers to a great question. We had one more, I think, in that area. Yeah, right here.
Hi, I'm a master's student in the Sociology and Education program, and I feel like my question was answered before, but I'm just going to ask it again to see if we have other thoughts on it. What is your advice for people who didn't have an academic background in education, like they didn't major in education for their undergrad, or any of the related stuff they're doing now in Teachers College? Yeah, that's my question.
Before the mic goes away, can I just ask you to say one more thing about that? So I just want to clarify, you're concerned about, for example, having to jump into a conversation that's got some things about which people are familiar already and you haven't taken formal classes in them.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I want to put it that way because I think that's recognizable for lots of folks, not only as a problem of whether you have a major in this or that, right? But maybe you're taking up a new degree field, or maybe you're coming from a different national context where the conversation about these issues has been different, right? So I think it's a great general question. So how do you get oriented to joining a conversation, right? Which is what everybody's doing here. I think one thing is to just call it that, right? Like when you sit down with an academic journal article, what you're doing is trying to listen in on people talking to each other, right? And so part of the question is like, what are these people saying to each other? What are the assumptions they're making? In the footnotes, in my discipline, or the work cited, you get hints of who came before, right? Who they're arguing with, how they want to change what you think. And so you don't have to do this with everything you read, but sometimes sitting down and trying to look somewhat sociologically at what you've been assigned and saying, okay, what is this conversation, right? What are the journals where people are having this conversation? Who seems to be arguing, like, who seems to be mad at whom sometimes, right? Those kinds of questions, which, it's not easy at the beginning, right? So, but if you just think of this as part of what you're trying to do, you're trying to decode this conversation amongst other people. And what are the tools you can use to do that, right? How can you use the references? How can you use the way, how can you ask questions about this directly in class? Like, I'm interested in this argument, I don't understand why it's new, or I don't understand what they're pushing back against, right? Those are good questions that can help to make more explicit the things that the author might be assuming you already know. So hopefully that'll happen, organically in your classes, but it's a set of skills that I think you can name for yourself as something that you want to develop, because it will make it easier to enter any one of these conversations, whether you had an undergraduate major in the field or you didn't. Yeah. And you're not alone, right? Like, everybody's trying to do this. Like, that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, everybody's trying to figure out what that conversation is and how to make sense of it.
I would add, to the extent that you can, I believe in what I call it reference surfing. So there's some stuff that's in the article that sort of piques your interests or raises a concern, and so looking at who the authors are that are that are responsible for those articles, and perhaps making the time to find those articles and read them yourself to sort of deepen your knowledge of that particular whatever that argument is, whatever that that debate might be. I think also helps to deepen your knowledge and helps you to feel better situated, more comfortable in the field, in the terrain of what that course might be.
And I'm just going to add to that. I think in my own experience as a student too, coming from not having studied education in any formal manner before, coming to teachers college, I also felt like very much an outsider. I don't know these conversations, these debates going on. But what I think we've learned in my cohort is there's a lot of power in admitting that and being vulnerable, because no one else knew what was going on either, right? There were a lot of conversations where I was not clued out because I didn't know ABC. Everyone was clued out because they didn't know ABC. And that conversation in and of itself was a really powerful learning experience, and just being able to be vulnerable with your fellow students, being able to be vulnerable with your faculty, because once we found out, oh, none of the 9 of us know what's going on, it was a lot easier to ask the faculty member, okay, wait, why are we talking about this? Why was this reading assigned? Because it's very confusing. So there's a lot of power in that vulnerability as well. So good question, great positioning, and thank you for asking it. We have, it looks like about 3 minutes left, so maybe time for one more question before we wrap up. Is there a question out there? We've got one up front. And I'll just run my mic over here.
Here it comes.
It's faster.
Thank you. Just quickly, can you speak into your experiences as a faculty advisor? Maybe what advice do you have for an incoming master's degree student? How to best take advantage of that relationship and what to pay more attention to?
So my sense is that I think there are tons of different master's programs here, and I don't want to generalize across my limited experience. I perceive, right, that there's a sort of implicit individualization in the PhD process, right? And it's a little bit less clear about how to make a master's program exactly what suits your interests. So I want to just name some of the things that we've already talked about that I think are really good advice for master's students. One of them is doing what Leslie suggested, Professor Williams, we're going to go back and forth, sorry, about shaping assignments to align with your interests, right? There's a thing that you care about and you don't see it on the syllabus, but there's a place on the syllabus for a research project of your own shaping. Well, guess what? You should use that as the opportunity, the invitation to focus on this thing that you feel like has been missing. Make sure you're in office hours. Make sure you find out other people at the master's level who are interested in similar things that you're interested in, so that if you need, the kind of student-created reading group that Professor Williams was suggesting, that could be a great way to focus on an issue that you're concerned about that you haven't seen represented in the curriculum. I think that those are some general suggestions. I think everything else is probably dependent on the specific master's program and how much space and how much, how the requirements are shaped, but I think those are good things to keep in mind.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add to that. The reading groups, the discussing groups, the writing groups, any of those things I think really help. And sometimes, your faculty advisor, if they've had you in a couple of courses, they might be able to guide you towards the, other students who might have similar interests, or faculty who might be teaching the types of courses that they think you would really benefit from, and so using that advice as well.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would add is that you don't have as many classes to work with as a master's student. So make sure, to the extent that you have choice, that you're taking classes that you actually really resonate with. So it's okay to take a class and go to the first session and decide, hold on, the syllabus and this approach doesn't quite work. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's okay to change it out for a different one, right? That's part of the reason there's some flexibility in the first couple of weeks. So don't feel like you're just like, I chose this one, I have to stick with it. You don't have enough classes in some ways to lose them to things that aren't really valuable to you. So to the extent that you have that freedom, use it.
I'm gonna wrap it up with another little piece of advice from a student perspective, is that also approach the advisorial relationship as a interpersonal communication. And that was helpful for me. It's not a one-way direction. It's not the advisors telling you, do this, do that, and then you will be successful and move on to your next step. Sometimes you have to think about the questions you're asking. Sometimes you have to think about why you're asking them. What do you specifically need? It's a two-way communication. And sometimes that exercise of just thinking about exactly what it is that I need from my advisor, is it advice on class? Is it advice on what I should be doing career-wise? Thinking through those things is really helpful and really benefits that relationship as well. So, okay, with that being said, it is time to wrap up. It's time for us to end this panel and start shifting over to our student experience panel. So thank you all for attending this. Feel free to hang around if you are attending the student experience panel next. But we really appreciate your thoughtful questions, your attentive listening, and we really, I think on behalf of the whole panel here, we really wish you the best successful start to your experience at TC, and really lean on your faculty, lean on your students, and enjoy it, because it's going to be fun.
Give us a few moments to switch over our panels. Feel free to stay. If you want to stick around for the student experience panel, just give us 2 or 3 minutes to reset. Thank you. Hi, everyone. There is a separate check-in sheet floating around in the audience with a QR code. Even if you attended the faculty advice panel, we ask that you recheck in for the student experience panel. So that will be coming around to you, and then it will also be available at the end. Thank you. Yes. Should we sit down? Yeah.
Moderator. What's that?
SNL when I grew up. That was my childhood goal. So this is a good second, you know.
I don't think it's on. There we go. Hi, everyone. Woo. You ready to get started? I know we'll have some folks trickling in, but we can begin. Thank you so much for being with us today. Welcome to TC. This is so exciting. My name is Laura Coleman. I'm the Associate Director of Employment Partnerships at TC Next, which is our career services office at TC. I'm sure you'll hear a lot about us over the next few days and weeks, but really excited to get to know you all and work with you all during your time at TC and beyond as alumni. But I'm even more excited to be here today to introduce you all to some of our current students as we host this panel to tell you about their student experience. So I have a few questions for the panelists, and then we're going to open it up for any questions that you all might have too. I also want to say hi to everyone who's joining us on Zoom. We're glad that you're watching us virtually. We're thinking of you, and glad to, of course, have everyone that was able to join us in person today. So to get started, I would love for our panelists to introduce themselves. So if you could each let us know your name, your program of study, and anything that you might be involved in here on the TC campus, that would be amazing. Neha, do you want to start?
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. So my name is Neha. I'm a second-year doctoral student in curriculum and teaching. Last year I was involved with the TC Senate, and this year I'm a Zenkel Fellow, so I will be teaching math intervention in New York schools. I really hope you guys have a wonderful time at TC. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name's Kate, and I'm going into my third year in social organizational psychology. I'm a master's student, and this is my final year. And last year I was involved with the Odyssey Club, so it's an organization and human development consulting club. I was a director of member engagement, and I'm so happy to be here. Congratulations again for getting into TC.
Hi, my name is Elena Peoples, and I'm a third-year doctoral student in anthropology and education. I'm a member of the student parent group here on campus, which is a student-led organization for students who are also managing caregiving responsibilities, and I'm a member of our student group for education and anthropology. I'm also a commuter, so I don't live here on campus. I actually come from Jersey. So if any of those things are relatable to you, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sean Hughes. I am a fourth-year doctoral student in applied linguistics, and I'm currently president of Queer TC, and I work as the program assistant in applied linguistics. Welcome.
Great, thank you all so much. So to kick it off, I am wondering how you all manage your time as a TC student along with all of your other responsibilities. I know some of you mentioned jobs, families, commute, research. How do you balance it all and manage all your time? And maybe Sean, we'll start with you this time.
That's a really good question. So I would have to say, like, for my first year or two here, really first year, I didn't balance it at all very well, so kind of a learning curve. I think my biggest accomplishment the last couple years has been time management. It's not a natural skill for me. So I started doing things like Google Calendar, started planning things out. And I know it sounds really silly, but I do plan things out even down to like the time I spend at home relaxing. And it's just so hard to not, like, to turn off that student mindset, to stop studying, to put things down, have dinner, you know, spend time with your family, whatever it is. So I actually schedule all of that out. I put it down on paper. I have little Post-it notes. I keep alarms on my phone when to put things down, when to sit down and not feel guilty about watching TV for 30 minutes. But that's like the biggest probably accomplishment I've had the last couple years, is learning that time management. And so that's how I deal with it.
Elena, do you want to go next?
Time management is a moving target. And also because I'm a parent and I have responsibilities to this tiny human. What I've tried to do, and advice I've heard from other parents, is to schedule non-negotiable time. So it's a little bit similar to what Sean is saying. But for me, Saturdays are family days. I don't do any school-related things on Saturdays. And it just time that I do things with my family, even if it is just cleaning the house. So that's setting those kind of boundaries has been really helpful. But that doesn't mean that just because you have non-negotiable time that you don't also have deadlines and other projects and things. Something that I do is I set, at the beginning of the day, I go over the different projects that I have going on and think through what 3 things can I do today that will advance these projects. So that's a little bit more flexible style maybe than what Sean was suggesting about scheduling to the minute, and that's also have ADHD, massive ADHD, so that's also part of that strategy, so that I can feel good that at least I'm making progress on things, even if it's not maybe exactly what I wanted. At least I know it's a forward direction. Just being really flexible with yourself and with the goals that you've set for yourself.
Hello. I just want to reiterate what you both said. What first came to mind is really identifying and committing to those non-negotiables. And then something that worked for me and some of my friends and classmates was to take it a step further and communicate those. So maybe you have work, you have a family, you have an internship, you have classes, and then you have a team project. And there's 5 different classmates in that team project, and you all have different priorities, and those are all valid. But how do you identify what each of those priorities are and then communicate them? So something that worked for me in one of my team projects that I remember is saying, like, hey, for me, like weekends, or let's just say Sundays, I don't do any classwork. Or maybe it's from 6 to 7, I cook dinner. Like, that's my thing, and I'm just not available during that time. Or even with this new hybrid space we've all moved into, what am I comfortable going virtual with, and what do I really want to be in person with, and like where's the value in both of those? Because commuting's time, so it's what's worth investing in and maybe what's not for you. And then I'd also like to add, just find what works for you. We've all spent so much time probably just living very busy lives, so if it's writing things down, if it's using a Google Calendar, whatever it may be, everyone has their own things. Find that and just commit, and you'll be just fine.
Already been said, I agree with and I practice, but one of the things that I do try to do is definitely find time for myself every day, at least an hour. And this is something I did in the spring semester. Is the first thing I did when the semester began, and once I decided all my classes, was I marked out the holidays. So there was something that I was looking forward to, and that really helped me because I was motivated to make sure I don't do anything during the holiday, like spring break. That helped me plan better, but everything else is, I second everything that all of them have said. And nothing that works for me will work for you. There might be a combination of things. So experiment, give yourself the time to, figure out what works best for you, and what might work for one class might not work for the other. So be open to having a flexible schedule despite the fact that you have already planned it. Yep, that's...
Thank you all for sharing those tips. The next question that we're all wondering about is, what is your favorite part about being a TC student? And I'm wondering if, Elena, you want to start for us?
Sorry, I was reading our cue to not turn off our microphones.
It's totally fine. We're going to keep our mics on. We're all good. What is your favorite thing about being a TC student? It's easy.
Yes. So my program is super small. There's only 3 of us in my year. So I love being part of this like close-knit cohort. I have found that everyone just has this like really like collaborative and collegial spirit, and I love that. That doesn't always happen in academia and at elite institutions, so that's really refreshing. And then also just how supportive the school is. All the various offices like TC Next and the Writing Center and the Disability Office, Graduate Student Life, that they're always like willing and ready to have a meeting, so that also like the spirit of support and collegiality. Also these like beautiful rooms.
All great parts. Kate, do you want to go next?
So you took the words right out of my mouth. I wrote my notes ahead of time, and that's exactly what came to mind first. But I think that just emphasizes how true that is, and how many students here really feel the collaborative spirit, the support. Like, everyone here really truly wants the best for you, and they walk the walk. Like, they're there to support you and help you out with whatever you need. I mean, I know oftentimes academic institutions say that, but I really feel like that is the reality here, which I really appreciate. That means a lot. Just don't be afraid to ask for help. I'd also add, so my programs, I think there's over 100 people in my program in social organizational psychology, so it's something I've really appreciated that surprised me is just how diverse my program has been in every sense of the word. So I really, really appreciate just the opportunity to learn from people of such diverse backgrounds and perspectives and experiences, ages, languages, and so on and so forth. It's really enriched my experience, my academic experience, my personal experience. So just lean on those diverse perspectives. I think that's something really unique that TC has to offer.
Go ahead, Neha.
My favorite thing, I don't think I have one, maybe I have multiple, but the 2 things that I found refreshing here was access to things that I probably didn't have before. Also, I'm from India. I should have mentioned that right in the beginning, but anyway, here we are. So there are a lot of things that I didn't have access to when I was back home, and also opportunity. So these are 2 things that TC always offers, and what you require, you will find here, and I'm sure you have heard this through the week, that you just have to ask, which is very, very true. And if you don't get the answer the first time, you'll definitely get the 3rd, 4th, and the number goes on. So that's actually my favorite bit about TC, is the fact that there is something for you to do here, and it's so true to even the way New York is. So TC in a way reflects that opportunity that you have, and that's one of my favorite things about TC. Thank you.
Gosh, you guys stole all my ideas. I was going to talk about the diversity and nice collaboration. I guess the only thing I'd have to add is community. I think something that I would recommend for everybody is to look at some student organizations. We have, I don't know how many, dozens. I was surprised to see how many we had on the GSLD website. Get involved in some organizations, meeting people. It's so easy to get in your cohorts and get locked in and not meet people from outside. Getting to other mixers and events and things like this is a great way to meet people that you don't have to see every day in class. But otherwise, sometimes it can be hard to meet new people and see new faces. So I think that would be my biggest thing that I enjoy, is just getting to different events. There's always something happening somewhere. Stop in, say hi, meet people. It's very easy to do here, and we have a great community.
Thank you all for sharing that. So some of you already have touched on the different supports that you found around campus, but my next question is about if you could share any offices specifically at TC that have been most helpful to you as a student, and maybe a little bit about why. Don't worry, you don't have to say TC Next, I know. But just curious about where you found support in some of the administrative departments around campus or within your academic program. And maybe Neha, will have you start.
Okay, there were a couple of offices that I found support in. So I live in TC Housing, and I found my community assistants and, well, Lemma. Jen is no longer here, but all these people are really, really supportive when I first moved in, and to help me understand how things are really different here. That was one organization, and the other was GSLD, and no, I'm not saying that's because we're here. But like, seriously, especially Denise and Alana, last year they really helped me through a couple of tough situations. So shout out to them if they're here. So they are always available for you whenever you need it. So these were two organizations that really helped me out. Thank you.
Kate, you can go next.
Yeah, I want to emphasize GSLD. I'm a little biased, not only because I'm here, but I also worked with GSLD a lot last year through the club I was a part of. But honestly, it was such a great resource from day one, even when we were fully virtual through now. There are a lot of different ways to stay connected. Like, I follow their Instagram account. Shout out to whoever runs it, but it's awesome. It's a great way to just stay clued into information. I think it's like TC Grad Life or something, easy to find. But you could also find their information on the student engagement portal. I'd also recommend signing up for their newsletter. I promise I didn't pay me to say any of this, but you can really learn everything from new student orientation events such as this, to volunteer opportunities, to free Broadway and jazz club tickets, to everything in between. So to your point, Sean, like it's been a way for me to sort of expand my network and community outside of sort of the insular program that I'm in, and meet people from all different departments, and also just explore not only TC, but our neighboring communities as well.
Go ahead.
Graduate student life for sure. TC is one of the only graduate schools that has a parent-student liaison. So Shirley, shout out to Shirley, has been amazing. That's a new role that TC just added this last year, and has been amazing at navigating those type of supports that student parents need to get situated in New York City, and just managing all the things. Something that she organized was coffees with all the different offices at TC. So shout out to all of them, because they're all doing amazing things, everything from Title IX to the Graduate Writing Center to just everyone. In addition to that, I'll also shout out the TC Library. You can make appointments with the research librarians, and they are incredible. So that's also maybe a service that maybe gets hidden under all of everything else, but check them out.
All right, I don't have much to add either. I was going to say GSLD as well. I kind of didn't really discover GSLD until last year, after we started to come back to campus. And after spending a year and a half sitting in a studio apartment that is about the size of this rug, I was ready to get out and meet people. And same thing, I actually discovered their Instagram, and I was like, oh, there's all these different things happening. There's all these different groups. That's where I found Queer TC, and then decided to get involved. And yeah, so GSLD's been awesome. Alana's awesome. That was going to be my response, but I also like the whole library and sounding smart thing too.
Yeah, those are all such great examples, and I know you'll continue to hear more through the rest of this week and as you get started at TC about all the other offices that are here to support you. I know there's a scavenger hunt happening where you get to go around and meet folks in a lot of the different offices, so please take the time to check them out. We're all here for you. We're excited to meet you and support you, so I'm glad that there have been so many spaces on campus that have supported you all. My last question before we go to questions for the audience, and this might be a hard one to just pick one thing, but I'm wondering what you all would say is a piece of advice that you would give a new student at TC. I'll give you a second to think, and then maybe Kate, if you want to kick us off.
I'm sure we all have so much advice, but find me after if you want more. I would say I'll give one practical piece of advice and one fun piece of advice. So I would say sort of establish what your priorities are early on, as soon as possible, and then set yourself up for success to accomplish those. Because at first I was thinking, say yes, the cliche, you regret saying yes more than you regret saying no. No. Did I say that right? Yeah. And I think that's true sometimes, although sometimes the reverse is opposites is the case. So I would say if your priority is to network or to get involved in research or to really get to know your classmates and develop your personal relationships here, whatever it may be, figure out how to accomplish that. So for example, for me, I started virtually. I started in 2020. So a year in, I was so hungry to meet people and really develop my network for both professional and personal relationships. That was my priority. So I figured out how to do that by reaching out to alumni, setting up coffee dates, getting involved on the leadership board of the club for my program, literally talking people's ears off after and before class, get to class early and be the last one to leave and just talk to the person next to you if that's your priority. So and then really quick, my fun advice, explore all the libraries around campus, Barnard, Columbia, TC. There are dozens and they're gorgeous and it's so fun to study there, so explore them all.
Those are some great tips. Neha, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think the only thing I'll say is be fearless. Now I say this because as graduate students, you will go through a lot of emotions. The suggestion I have is feel all of them, because you will realize at the end of it that it was all worth it. So that is why I say be fearless, because I think it takes courage to feel all of those feelings that you feel. My God, they range from happiness to frustration to finally feeling relieved that the semester is done. So I would say the other aspect of being fearless is do try things that you haven't done before, especially if you have an inkling that, yeah, I might be good at it. Really work on that might. You never know what will come out of it. That's how I got into TC Senate. I didn't think I had it in me. I'd never done anything Senate or union related before, but it was honestly a whim, and it was a fun experience. So, yep, that's my advice. Thank you.
I'll go to Sean next.
Sure. I think I'll go with 2 points as well, one practical and one also fun. So my first practical point would be sort of maintaining your mental well-being. It's really easy to get caught up and feel, I think I'd say guilty about not studying all the time. And definitely during the shutdown when we were at home during the pandemic, it was absolutely mind-boggling how hard it was to separate yourself, your personal self from your student self, from your work self, and all those things. And coming back to campus, it's still difficult, but I've tried to focus a little bit more on maintaining personal time and not feeling bad about it. Because you really will get so focused in your studies that you're gonna feel bad when you're not doing something school related all the time. Don't feel guilty. Take care of yourself. don't get burned out. And because like I think my cohort started with like 6 people, and I'm the last one, so don't get burned out. And then last thing is take advantage of the city. Take advantage of being a student and not paying for things. Go to the world's best museums here. You know, enjoy all these things. I don't even know how many museums and things we have access to. Student discounts. If you're not sure, Google them. But like, I get a discount for haircuts even. Like everywhere we have discounts. TC has so many connections. Columbia has so many connections. And yeah, just get out on the town, enjoy it, enjoy your time here. Yeah, like live the life. I don't know how many of you are New Yorkers or planning to stay here after you graduate, but if you're not from here and you're only here for a couple years especially, take advantage. Really go for it. Yeah, that's what I have.
This is all excellent advice. I think that, yeah, so at the end, I caught the end of the last panel, and that last bit of conversation was about being willing to be vulnerable and ask questions. I think I'll echo that. I am never afraid to be the dumbest person in the room and ask all of the seemingly obvious questions that are not true to, like that I don't know. And as the person on the panel said, you'll come to find out that there are other people that have the same question or have a question in the same vein. So that holding open that space, right, like is really, I think is a good way to move through the world. And then at the same time, also like, I think I also heard from that panel to meet with your advisor, to go to office hours. A lot of folks, you know, like they schedule these like 15-minute windows, and you feel like, it can feel like the pressure's on, like, oh my gosh, I have these enormous questions and I'm so confused, what can I do in 15 minutes? But those 15 minutes actually can go a long way. And you're not the first student to ask the question that you've gone into that room to ask. So I think that would, and that kind of goes with that fearlessness that you're talking about, just put yourself out there. And then on the like more like fun side of things, because being vulnerable isn't always fun. I mean, just everything that everyone already said. Go to the events and the student group things and meet people and yeah, just have fun, right? Because that's YOLO, right?
I love that. What a perfect spot to end my questions on. Thank you all so much for sharing this advice. It's been fantastic. And we don't have to stop yet. Now it's time for your questions. So I think we probably have a microphone so that the people on Zoom can make sure that they hear you as well. So if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask a question for our student experience panelists, we can get started. I want to start right if you're in the front.
Hi, my name is Maureen Gilbo. I'm a master's student, an incoming master's student. I know that you said that we have discounts to different places. I was wondering, where can we like access like a list to different things that have student discounts or student promotions?
That might be a better question for you. I'm not sure.
Sure, of course. So I think Graduate Student Life Office, they have a poster of all the museums you can get into for free. They have lots of resources. Also, if you just Google Columbia student discounts, there are a bunch of places. A lot of times you're just going somewhere and asking when you're checking out, do you offer a student discount, showing your ID card. Most places, that's probably good enough. So I would say between those 3 things, it covers you in a lot of spaces.
I'll add one more.
Yeah.
Subscribe to the newsletter.
Yes.
Because you always see events there, and there's like film festivals and stuff pop up all the time. I went to one last year, and it was like a 50% discount for us. And those are just things that I saw in the email newsletter.
Yeah, great question. Next person up here.
Hi, I'm Megan, also getting a master's. And when it comes to mentorship, obviously, I think the first source of mentorship we think of is always faculty, but I'm curious if you guys have found mentorship in any kind of non-traditional avenues, or if you guys have a mentor that you might not have thought would have been a mentor, but then became a mentor. Anything around that area would be super helpful, and would love to hear that.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. I am constantly nagging the year above me and like the more senior students about things. Also the program coordinator, so like the more of the administrative support staff for your program often know answers to questions more readily than faculty do. So make sure you tap that resource. And then also just like in my classes, if somebody says something in our discussion that's really interesting, just always following up and saying like, hey, that was cool. Can we go get some coffee? Can we talk about that? And through that, developing like a peer support system. Yeah, that's what I'll throw out there.
The other thing is you could also, at least this happens in CNT, where we are in a way given someone we can reach out to. You will have certain people who are above in the years, my God, English today, who are way advanced in your program, and they might be open to, playing the role of a mentor, so you could check if that is something that happens in your department as well. The other space where you can, in a way, have someone who can mentor you is through the student organizations that we were talking about earlier. You will definitely find someone who's like-minded or might have similar thoughts about whether, even if they're not in your field, having a completely different, having a mentor in a different perspective, from a different field has also, I have seen benefits of it. So these are a few places you could try.
Just to add something brief, I agree with all of that. Like in the club I'm a part of, we have informal mentorship programs and also formal mentorship program. One thing I would say, maybe this is slightly program specific, but reach out to alumni. Like go on LinkedIn or however else you find alumni. Like for me, LinkedIn is the most effective way, and reach out. Like I always hate to bother people, and then I realize like anytime anyone reaches out to me, I'm just completely flattered and would love to talk to them. So they probably feel this similarly, and they often like to give back or at least stay connected to the TC community. So yeah, don't hesitate to do that.
I would emphasize people in your cohort, in your classes who are maybe a year ahead of you. I felt like, because I did my EDM and then now my EDD, and I felt like sometimes I didn't exactly know what I was supposed to be doing each year, like your final projects. Once you get into the doctoral program, there's different hurdles that you have to go through, and I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. And meeting with your advisor is great, but then like just having friends in your cohort who are maybe a year ahead of you, and you're like, what did you do for this paper? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. It's a great way. Step outside the classroom, have dinner, whatever. Talk to each other. It's also how I found my job. I'm the program assistant, and one of my cohort members, she left the job to take another job, and she was like, hey, you should do this job, and I took it. So like, just talk to people who are maybe a year ahead of you or 2 years ahead of you. If you're in doctoral program, if you're in the master's program, talk to people who are a year up. Don't be afraid to ask dumb questions, because they're not dumb. Even if other people aren't asking them, they probably have them as well. Yeah, I would totally emphasize talking to other students.
Those are all such good points. Thank you all for sharing. I have to, of course, echo the LinkedIn suggestion. And if you need help with your LinkedIn, our office would be happy to help you. But also, I have to plug the Student Life Ambassador Program in the Graduate Student Life and Development Office, which is a really fantastic way that current students that have been at TC for a little bit, create some programming and community and spaces where new students can also get connected. So we've continued to plug all the great newsletters and social media that you'll be seeing, but keep a lookout, because the Student Life Ambassadors are also there and are great people to connect with too. I think there's someone right here in the front. Yes.
Thank you for being here. My name is Sophia, and I guess my question is, what is the one most challenging time you felt during your years at TC? Like, can be a period of time, an event, like whatever that is. And also, can you just recap what programs you were in a little bit? Because I thought I came in late and didn't catch some of this. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, I'll start, because I came here in 2019, and my first, I don't know, what was it, like 7 months, something like that, whatever it was in person. We went away for spring break and shut down during spring break, didn't come back. That was by far the most challenging thing I had, and then as I talked about, sort of working, studying from home, all that was the most challenging. I think kind of what I talked about before, which is learning to separate your mental space was my solution to that, and it still is true now that we've come back. And I'm in applied linguistics, that's my program.
I think that in doctoral programs, there's like a season of difficulties that's different each. Like there's a different thing that's hard all the time. I think that so I started 2020, so our new student orientation was all online. And that first year was hard in terms of developing relationships and like being like super intentional about going to office hours, about like setting up that group chat with your classmates, like doing all those things. And then but since I'm a commuter, it was sort of like a sweet deal to be able to work from home. Then coming back to campus and sort of like doing new student orientation without being a new student had its own challenge. I think I'm at a point where I'm finishing coursework and I'm prepping for certification exams, so that's maybe the new challenge. And in my program, I'm a doctoral student in anthropology and education.
So I'm in the social organizational psychology master's program, and I started in 2020, and it's in the Department of Organization and Leadership. So my program has a lot of flexibility, so I started part-time virtually, and then I was full-time, and now I'm finishing part-time. But those were great answers to the question. I don't have anything to add. I mean, I do.
I'm in the doctoral program in curriculum and teaching. And for me, so as an international student, I always believe that my command over the English language isn't the best. So in the classroom, I have hesitated to state my point of view. Also in my program, I'm the youngest, along with someone else, a few others. So in the classroom, and I know that there are people who have so much more experience, especially in the American context, I have felt a little unsure about whether I should share my point of view or not. I'm working on it, but it's there. It's very, very real. But that is a challenge that I do tend to face in classrooms where I do feel a little intimidated by the experience of the person, not so much the person or what they're saying.
Thank you all for sharing those. I think, was there a question right behind you? And then we'll move over to the other side.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jalissa Jones. I'm also a commuter student, and I just wanted to know a little bit more about the commuter experience, and like what resources are available for commuters. Like, is it commuter lounge? Is there a fridge to put my food in? Some of those possibilities, but I also understand that we were in COVID for most of the time, so there might have not been a commuter experience.
Yeah, I can talk to that. So I commute from Central Jersey, which is a little bit farther than most people come. So I come up on the train to Penn, and then I switch to the one to come the rest of the way up. Honestly, I think that commute is a little bit easier than folks coming from, say, Brooklyn, have like 4 transfers.
Yeah.
Because I get a lot of work, like extended work time on the train, where I can just sit and work on my laptop. I use a text-to-speech reader, so I actually listen to most of my articles, like podcasts, while I'm doing my commute. And just like a lot of like apps that I can do on my phone, although I do use my laptop. So that's a tip for commuters. In terms of resources for commuters on campus, there's a microwave in the dining hall. There's the meal plan and the TC dollars that you can get. So I don't pack a lunch. I just buy things here on campus, and it's reasonably priced and pretty decent. The fridge and that sort of thing, there isn't like a communal space for that, but you can talk to your program. They might have something for staff that they'll let you use, or if your program has like a student office space. And then just like hanging out in the library's beautiful. You can reserve rooms there. There's the you can work in the dining hall, you can just find empty classrooms to work in, so you can kind of claim a space and set up for the day. So, yeah.
Also, I think a new thing this year is there are lockers available, right? You probably know. I think it's like $25 for the year. So if you want to leave things here, like a jacket or textbooks, that's probably, and if you're a commuter, that may be a good resource to utilize.
I don't know if this will help, but if you also have end up making friends who live in TC housing, you can use their fridge. Just saying.
All great pieces of advice. I love it. More questions? Other things you'd like to know about? Yeah, can we pass it over on this side? Thank you. Making you run everywhere, Tom.
I know, I didn't sign up for this. Okay. I want to know where the haircut discount place is.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Anna. I'm an international student, master's degree. I have tons of questions, but I have two questions related to Columbia in general. So the first one is, are there other groups and like, I don't know, team sports or arts groups outside TC at Columbia that we can join and that you guys recommend? And the second one is whether you guys had the possibility to join classes at like other schools, maybe, I don't know, international relations schools, law schools, something like that.
I can start. I would say there are many possibilities to get involved with clubs at Columbia and take classes at the various colleges. I would say it's very program specific. Yeah, it's complicated. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's pretty complicated, and there are different, I think for international students it's different. The tuition is different. You have to be taking a certain amount of credits. Yeah, all that to be said, I know plenty of people who have, and it's really enriching. Sometimes there are like crossover classes. So I took a class at TC that was with, I believe, the School of Professional Studies. It was just like combined, so that sort of felt like a combination of the two. I have a friend who's on a intramural soccer team because she just like made friends with people who are at Columbia. So you can do it through informal ways, but I would say like what I would recommend is maybe talk to like a professor about it. Also do a lot of research online. Also find a classmate, an older classmate who's done it. That's probably the best piece of advice, like in your program in the same situation as you, yeah.
So you can definitely register, like she said, in different classes, especially if you're interested in something. You should reach out to the professor stating that this is your interest, whether it is in, because I have had some friends who have taken classes in Barnard and they have been international students, so it shouldn't be a challenge. And last year I did take a methods course in ITSF or IC, whichever the department it is. So you can definitely take courses, but I would suggest first reach out to the professor taking the class and then reach out to your, that you will have a program person. Reach out to them saying this is what you are looking to do. The thing about activities that you can do, my friends and I, we did take part in some group classes that Grace Dodge offers that we found helpful. We also attended almost every festival that Columbia celebrated because they have a little more money. They do stuff on a big scale. The food is better, by the way. Sorry, just saying. So do that. And that's a really good way to meet other people from your community, even if you don't find them here. You should try it.
Just to add a tiny bit, yeah, when you reach out to professors, this is probably what you mean, but like email them multiple times. I assume that's, but I learned like the hard way, but especially at Columbia, I don't know if you're looking at the College of International Studies or whatever, email them and email them again. I know a professor there, and they're like, if I don't get an email multiple times, it means they're not committed. Not every professor feels that way, but some do, so be a little persistent.
Also, earlier you sent the email. I'm so sorry. Earlier you sent the email in the day is better. At least that's a strategy that's worked in the past, like 9 a.m. And then be relentless, like she said. Just keep sending emails.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of relentlessness. So here at Teachers College, like we know that we're Teachers College, but Columbia as an institution, they don't always understand that there's procedural differences between Teachers College and Columbia, and so you have to do some self-advocacy with whatever you're doing across the street. But in terms of like the social things, the student groups, all of that, the gym, right, like all of that is open to Teachers College students. So tip on emailing professors, Gmail has a feature where you can schedule send. So you can do that to save yourself a little bit of aggravation.
I just want to say one extra thing about the gym. Definitely use it. It's a nice resource that you have here. And if you go down, because it's kind of in the basement, and when you go down to the gym, there's like sign-up sheets that you can actually sign up for different sports, because I joined a soccer team there. So that's how I found my intramural team, because I didn't know anybody on campus to put a team together, but they actually had like a sign-up, so that was really cool. Any sports you're interested in.
And I'll just say one more thing about classes elsewhere. This is for the doctoral students. I don't know about if it works for the master's students, but the Teachers College in Columbia are part of a consortium with other universities in the region. So you can take classes at NYU or at Fordham or at even Princeton. I forget, there's like a list of 7 or 8. Yeah. So that's also something to look into if the courses that you need for your interests aren't here at TC.
And you can do that as an international student as well.
Great advice. I think the moral kind of having open communication with your advisor, with folks that you're working with, and then persistence are all great pieces of advice. Next question. Yes. Yeah, if you don't mind, just so the people on Zoom can hear you as well. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much, everyone. Your insights have been wonderful, and I think these are whatever you said is exactly what I wanted to hear at the start of my program, right? So just go ahead and be relentless, as you always told me, right? My question is actually just open, so I don't know how to, kind of put it into a sort of specific way, but I want to understand if there are some situations you want to warn us about, that are less likely talked about, and we will most likely find ourselves in, so that we can prepare ourselves as to how can we navigate those tricky situations. Sometimes, for example, talking about money management or something like that, we are not really talking about openly, but students go through. Any situation you found yourself in the beginning, but you didn't know how to navigate that situation.
Just been smooth sailing, nothing challenging.
Good.
Can't really.
I will talk from my experience, which is financial, because we're all going to run into that here. TC is not the best funded school, we all know, especially master's programs, my experience. So what nobody told me about that I wish I had known when I came here was all the scholarships, grants, and fellowships available. I was also Zenkel Fellow for 2 years. I did not know about that. My program assistant, the one who took the job before me, was like, hey, why don't you apply for this Zenkel Fellowship? I had no idea that there was one for like bilingual education, for ESL, ENL. I got into that immediately. That paid so much of my tuition. I've gotten a couple scholarships that I just applied for, like diversity grants and things like that, that just nobody applied for them, so they kind of handing them out. I went to a couple conferences. I applied online for reimbursement. I got it like immediately, and it's just that people don't know that they're there, I guess, and they don't apply for them. So don't be afraid to like get out and do conferences and things like that and apply for this. You can just go online and find out about it. But there's so many different funding sources that nobody told me about when I came, and I wish I had known that like my first year coming in, because yeah, I spent a lot of my savings coming here my first year, and then after that I kind of figured things out a little bit more. But that would be like my biggest tip is Google it, sit on the website, go through every funding resource that you can find. It will really help you potentially a lot.
Yeah, I'll just echo that the program coordinators and the program assistants, they are just like flush with all this information because they've seen so many students move through these types of questions. So get to know them, and don't be shy about asking those types of questions. The other thing that I'll add is that I'm registered with the Office of Disability. They're super helpful there. Accommodations that I wouldn't have thought to ask, you schedule an appointment when you register, and they talk you through what your particular situation is, what kind of accommodations you may have received in the past, and kind of brainstorm, like maybe, I don't want to call it a wish list because it's not about that, but sort of like different arrangements that might be helpful for you that you wouldn't have thought of yourself. And then also like a little bit of coaching about how to have those conversations with faculty. Faculty receive that differently. At the graduate level, faculty are generally pretty flexible, but depending on what your situation is, you might need something a little bit more formalized. So that's another space that if that applies to you, don't be shy. They're super helpful.
One thing I'll say is sometimes registering for classes is challenging, and that's the case with every single academic institution, I think, ever. It's just a reality, but it's totally fine. I would just say know that, and it'll all work out. I would say go into registration every semester really prepared, like know everything, know your backup classes, know the times you want, be super prepared 10 minutes beforehand. And if you don't get all the classes you want, TC is here to help. Honestly, that's been my experience every time. I've almost always gotten the classes I wanted. And when I haven't, or if there were any challenges, email the people that are there to help. Like, email the professor that you didn't get in, if you didn't get into their class, or email like the support system in your program. They'll find a way to support you. So don't get discouraged. Like, don't be afraid to reach out for help, even if you don't like get what you want right off the bat. That'd be my piece of advice.
With respect to funding, it does work slightly different for international students given the number of hours we can work is only 20 hours, and most projects do require a little more amount of time. So I would say, since the funding opportunities are limited, the person who's running the project, reach out to them first, telling them that this is what you are applying for. Also, unfortunately, not everybody is aware of the visa stipulation, so you also have to remind them, so do that as well. Every scholarship that you're eligible for, apply. Because again, like I said, there are certain, all institutional scholarships you're eligible for, so definitely apply for that as an international student. There might be some federal scholarships you are not eligible for since you're not a US citizen, but there are quite a few out there. Definitely institutional scholarships you should look at those. And if you come across any, look at the employment portal actually. There you have quite a few opportunities. And reach out to those professors. So even if they don't, you might not be eligible for that particular project that they have advertised for, there will be something else that your profile, might be the right fit for. So there is a lot of emailing you will have to do from your end, but I will not say that it is super easy. It is a lot of emailing back and forth, but I'm sure you'll get something if you really try.
I just want to add one thing to that. As a program assistant, I forgot to say this earlier. At the beginning of the school year or beginning of each semester, we generally recruit students' CVs, send in your CV, and we can place you into some research opportunities, which generally pay. So even if you don't get an email, you should get on your listserv for your programs as well. That's like my best advice. Once you get on the listserv, you might get an email, but even if you don't, contact your program assistant, program secretary, any of the admin people, and just say, hey, here's my CV. I'm interested in any opportunity that they have. We really do keep those, and we email them all out to our faculty. We get people hired all the time. Research looks great, and also you get paid for it. So hit up your admin in your program.
Thank you guys. Really great pieces of advice for all of those perhaps tricky things that you might navigate. I'll add my last tip before we wrap up, which is in the literal navigation of TC. I know if you spend a little time on campus, it can feel like a labyrinth, right? So my trick is that typically if you head down to the basement, most of the buildings are connected and you can kind of orient yourself a little bit more easily. So that's my trick. Also, don't be afraid to ask someone for directions. There's going to be 1,000 people trying to figure it out next week, so don't be afraid. But I want to wrap us up for today. I want to thank our panelists so much for sharing about their experiences at TC, and we all just want to congratulate you. We are so excited for you to start your journey here, so thank you so much for coming, and I'm sure we will see you all again tomorrow. But thank you, panelists.